Hi, everybody, and welcome to Undubbed, where we're unscripted, uncensored, and undeniably data. Now, today, we've got a new series for you, and it's called What Makes a Great. And today, we're starting with What Makes a Great Leader. Sophie, over to you. What makes a great leader?
So many things make a great leader. I think it's really easy to say what doesn't make a great leader, and for the mind to flick into things that aren't so positive. But I'm going to start with going back to earlier in my career and talking about one of my early leaders. Murray had a knack for sitting back and observing. What makes a great leader are people who observe, looking for where people can excel along the way and helping find them ways to excel in line with the vision or strategy of the organization. Murray hired me to build an access database to reconcile assets. I had no experience with that whatsoever, but he'd seen that I had really good Excel skills. Even in the interview, I was saying to him, I haven't done this before. And he's like, don't worry, you'll be fine. You've got great Excel skills. Already, he was observing a skill set that was adjacent and knowing that I would be good to go and do what he needed. As I was working for him, I had a couple of months in a contract. He observed me helping the guy next to him analyze trends. And so he found me work to do that same trend analysis as well. Thinking back, there was also another leader who did this sort of observation at another organization. John had his personal analyst leave the organization, and there was only a few days to pick up and understand her work. And they gave me a few months to automate it. Now, John was actually the CEO of the organization, and he would walk the floors and stop and ask people questions about what they were working on. So whilst I was replacing his previous analyst just to do some automation, I wasn't reporting directly to him. So he would ask me what I was working on. He enjoyed the chat around it and sort of walked off, and I didn't think anything less. Now, I finished that particular job in half the time that I needed to. And even though I'd figured out a new job to start that was a permanent role instead of a contract, John heard that I was going to be leaving, and he pulled me into his office and spent over an hour convincing me to stay, and he created me a role in his organization as well. What stands out for me in those two examples was that they were taking time to really understand whether it's a silent observation or if it's actually coming and having a chat to somebody and observing what things people are really good at and then finding space for them to really excel in.
Yeah, and I really like how you've talked as well around the CEO, John, of the organization walking the floor. We've worked in really big organizations and we've seen the big hierarchies that it can have, and to see someone like John walking the floor and how much he got out of encouraging you to stay on and perform a role that he had, the ability to know that you could do that purely because he'd walked the floor and came and seen that. One of the things about being a great leader is cutting through the hierarchy and actually talking to everyone in the organization. I know that we've seen initiatives come in like the skip level reviews, which has tried to encourage that. But what I liked about your story is you've got John that's just taken the initiative to get to know the people on his floor. And at the time, I think you said you were, a contractor there. So you were, kind of the lowest, on the scale almost.
Not even lowest from being a contractor. I think lowest from just simply being at the stage in my career where I was at. I was young. I was so young that I was naive, that thinking, oh, this is normal for somebody to come and have a chat. I haven't seen a lot of that actually occur later in my career. Perhaps it becomes more difficult as we have more virtual organizations where we're working, online a lot more. It's something that definitely sticks out to me and would be something that I would want to go back to as well and find that kind of leadership again.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Sarah, tell me about something that stuck out for you around great leadership.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say back to your original point, it's very easy to think of some bad leaders in my time, and I'm lucky to have a lot of great leaders. One that's automatically kind of comes to my head is a manager called Adam. A couple of years ago, I was going through a really tough time with my son's schooling, and I was in quite a high pressure job, and I actually feeling a bit emotional about this one already, but had to just sort it out. I was a single mum in another country, and it had to be resolved. And I think,
take a moment.
Yeah. I think great leaders can show a bit of compassion as well. Yeah. So I had to take quite a bit of time off work and resolve this. And what I really remember is my leader, Adam, not only saying, but really standing behind that he and the management team would do and support me in whichever way that I needed to be supported. And not just saying it, but actually following through. And I remember for quite some time, our one-on-ones would always start with him asking about the situation and whether it had improved or not. And then also just making sure that small things, his EA would make sure that during certain times of the day, things weren't booked for me, so I could just make sure that transition worked.
Thank you for sharing that. I know how hard it is to open up, in particular when we're having these conversations. We don't even know where it's going to go or who it's going to reach along the way. It's important to recognise that we can't compartmentalise what's actually going on in our personal life to what's going on in our professional life as well. As much as we would like to be able to shut the door to our office or come into work in person and say, okay, well, now's the work time, actually what is happening at home impacts work, and what is happening at work impacts home as well.
Yes. To finish off that story, throughout the entire time of this, Adam was very conscious about not ever stepping over boundaries. So asked permission to talk about it each time, because it was upsetting. I got upset just now. Like, imagine how upsetting it was at the time. So he would make sure we were in a quiet space, ask me if I wanted to talk about it at all. And if not, he would put his business face back on and off we would go. I really appreciated that. So I feel a really big part of being what makes a great leader is empathy.
Okay, next.
Sophie, what makes a great leader?
Another thing that makes a great leader is people who coach. I had a leader, his name was Strav, who has taught me some of the best resilience and perseverance techniques that I try to help other people with as I've started to lead them. Now, our roles weren't always sunshine and roses. There was kind of politics like any large organisation. Have any of you tried to get a tool implemented where there's one that already exists that's similar in nature? Yeah, and that go.
Yeah, really hard.
It often feels like you're just tapping against that brick wall. Many organisations back in the day that used to be Click versus Tableau, now it would be Tableau versus Power BI and data visualization. With Strav, we'd go into meetings with senior individuals, and I was a lowly manager. Now, I use that as a way to describe the hierarchy within organisations. I was a manager, and I was going into meetings with head ofs, managing directors. Yet Strav would let me prep and talk. I was the one with experience in data and analytics. Strav was the leader in terms of the operational transformations that were going on. And most of the time, I would walk out of that meeting feeling really downtrodden, like I'd made a shitload of mistakes and that there was no chance of moving forward. And why would I feel that way? Well, there would always be a lot more senior individuals who were backing the different tool to what I was backing. They would come in and one after the other, they would ask questions and I would respond to them. But when you're the one person responding, it makes it feel like
it's an attack.
You're defensive. Yeah, you're on defense the whole time and it comes across like that. So even though I would walk out of the meetings feeling like there was zero chance that this would move forward, even though I knew that it was the way that we should be going, Strab would always find this single glimmer of light that was seeping through this brick wall. The reason why I describe it like that was because we would just try to chip away all the time and we'd go into these meetings and I'd be banging my head against that brick wall and we'd come out and Strab and I go for a cigarette to start with.
Oh.
Good times back in the day. He would just sit there and he would talk about the one glimmering light and he would grab a crowbar and say, that's what we're doing. And he'd just wedge it open. We'd get through that brick wall and wouldn't you know it, there's another one across the side as well. So off we trot until the next time that we came up against the naysayers. This has been really important to me to focus on the fact that people will come up with 100 different reasons to shoot down your ideas, but if you can find ways to navigate around them, that positive technique, focusing on the positives, you eventually find a breakthrough.
Yeah, I really like that. And you mentioned earlier around coaching. So did you find that Strab coached you to how you ultimately leveraged that crowbar technique into your own leadership?
Absolutely. The muscle memory that he was creating for me as I felt downtrodden and like I'd failed, that it wasn't going to work and we weren't going to get it across the line, because he was role modeling this behavior of, no, Fifi, blah, 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 and would go through it. It helped me to understand, even if you were hearing no from people, there's always a way around it. He would, chip in some of these meetings where he would see they were going off and he would prime some of the ideas where he was getting the glimmers of light as well. How he coached was really about helping me to understand where to focus on. When I stepped back as I matured in my career, I could see, it's an incredibly powerful tool. Even when you feel like there is no more moving forward, there's always opportunities to get around things.
My mind just actually wandered to a time where I had a manager talking about kind of opportunities and seeing things. It was my first role straight out of university, and I was working in the coffee industry. And I always say I kind of had two managers there. So I had John, who was our general manager, and I had Nick, who was our marketing manager. I had to come in and tell them something that was going to impact how I was going to get to work each day. I won't go into details. I remember I had to sit both of them down and tell them, and I was young. I was straight out of university. I was so nervous. I thought I was going to get fired. And funny story, well, maybe not so funny, but the first thing Nick said was, don't worry, when I was 8, I shot my cousin in the leg. Bearing in mind, I had not done anything remotely like that. That was kind of going to the extreme. I was like, okay. And then John turned around and said, well, we've got this opportunity over here that we need you to work on, and let's do it. And I just really remember thinking, wow, I thought, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to lose my job. This is horrible. And Nick came up with some random comment that popped into his head about shooting his cousin in the leg. And John had already in his head come up with another opportunity and gone forward with that. And off I went, which is maybe didn't quite learn my lesson like I should have, but love the leadership style.
That is amazing. So I need to pause on a couple of things there. And just for anyone who's listening, not normal for people in New Zealand to shoot one another.
No.
But I love how he just took it down into what's the worst thing he could probably think of to make you feel better. Because we're human. We are human and we've all done silly things. I also love that it wasn't like their first thought wasn't punishment. It was like, oh, how are we going to turn this frown upside down?
Yeah. Exactly. I still laugh about it now.
I love it. I need to go and work for John and Nick.
Well, I actually caught up with Nick recently, and love the fact we're still in contact.
That's awesome.
So, any more stories popping into your head, Fee, or what makes a great leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So another one from Strav, and he's made a huge dent, I reckon, in my career. Strav was a leader who really understood how important it was to have tough conversations. Some of my best roles that I've also had my most difficult struggles, which is really interesting, right?
When it's a great job, you put everything into it. You get really passionate about it. When you're feeling comfortable as well, you're really driving.
Yeah.
And taking risks.
Yeah, that's a good one. Having a place that you can take risks. And so Strav, with his Stravisms, would start out tough feedback by saying, I'm going to give it to you right between the eyes.
Love Strav.
Now, that can be a bit brutal, but on reflection, it's much better than getting a knife between the shoulder blades when you're not looking. Had that as well from some leaders. Mm-hmm. So Strav would give me the space to make mistakes, but he would also let me know when I'd breached the boundaries. We achieved like groundbreaking stuff when we worked together, and I really know it's because he gave me enough rope that I could go out there to chase the success, although sometimes I'd get caught up in it. And that's when he would give me the feedback. It's a awful thing to deliver feedback. That's tough feedback. No one wants to do it. Lots of people hide from it. Mm-hmm. I'm just grateful that he would sit me down and really tell me, hey, it's not going to work like that. And you need to change and you need to figure this out. So, yeah, delivering tough feedback or having those tough conversations makes a really great leader.
Yeah, I agree. I remember having a manager back in London called Lucy, and she was so direct. And I remember being so scared of her at the time. And when I reflect back, she'd always say this one thing, and it was like, we've had this conversation, Sarah. And I'd be like, have we? And when I think back, she was a very busy leader. She had, lots of things on, and she was very direct. And I think that clashed with me for a little while. But when I reflect back now, having her be so direct, and like you said, she was giving it to me between the eyes and not in the back. Way, way better.
Way better.
Constructive feedback is so important.
And it's not always a shit stack sandwich. Okay. What else, Sarah? What else makes a great leader?
Fia, you and I have spoken around neurodiversity in the workplace. And, we've worked with people that are neurodiverse, and we both think of ourselves as potentially undiagnosed in the ADHD field. A great leader, Greg, has given me the opportunity to work to my energy level. And that's something where I've been able to feel confident enough to say to him, hey, Greg, kind of got ants in my pants today, and I'm just not going to be able to sit at my desk. So I'm going to go for a walk. We've got our one-on-one scheduled at this time. Hey, it's going to be hot at that time. We were both in Singapore. Can we do it maybe slightly earlier? He was a super early riser, so I knew I could always kind of catch him in the morning or whatever. Can we have our chat now? I'm out walking. And he'd always be like, yeah, sure. Just knowing that, people work in different ways and methods, and some people like to be at their desk all day. Other people need that movement. And I just really appreciated how Greg gave me that flexibility and gave me enough confidence to ask for it as well.
I think I could do better in this space with leading neurodiverse teams. Working in data, I think we've got higher chances of working with people who are neurodiverse. What I really love about our partnership is that we can talk about when we've got the ants in the pants or when we need a specific break on things. But I would always love to hear more around what I can do better And a small plug for our community. We do have a neurodiverse community forum on the Dub community, and I would love to learn more from people who are neurodiverse and can help to share what are the things that help them from their leaders and also their teams to be more successful in their roles as well. All right. Next up for me is actually it's at the same organisation as Strav, and it was his leader. The thing that made Frances stand out as a terrific leader was her sponsorship of things. So transforming organisations, really no easy task. Spoiler alert, no one likes to change, even if the change is actually really super beneficial along the way. Sometimes that's what data people are actually asked to do, whether it's change themselves or help to change their organisations. I strongly believe it's about change management and that sponsorship along the way. And you might not want to hear this, listener, but change management comes top down. So by leaders actually role modeling the behaviour and sponsoring the behaviour and talking about the behaviour and setting the expectations for that behaviour. The best outcomes I've seen in transformation is when leaders are committed to change management. They invest in hiring change managers who set out the plans that gives everyone the best opportunity to implement the change. Now, Frances, she was the best leader that I've seen who has committed to change and transformation. She would turn up at every steerco. She would deliver on the steps that were hers, which meant prioritising her time, like change comms, having calendar blocked out to record videos, and she knocked it out of the park. Now, before the change would go in, she would ask all of the tough questions. She wouldn't let you get away with anything, but once it was ready, she was 100% committed to actually getting things across the line. And I still remember her very vividly recording videos for our launch. And I felt like she was a real rock star for doing it and leading by example.
Yeah, great. And really stepping in, right, and fronting up, not just being that leader that was there when things went bad or to take the glory, but actually being there with the hard graphs with you in those meetings as well. Another story that comes into my mind is more of a general one, but around culture and having great leaders that look at the positive and the negative within the culture and try and shift and shape a team. So leaning into the things that are good about the company and then trying to help avoid or redirect the toxicity that can sit in a culture. That is really important for what makes a great leader, is being able to navigate within the bounds of the organization's culture and to try and impact it in a positive way.
I love that. And I'd love to add some things that I've seen that really help to shape that culture as well, to help turn things around. That means being present. We talked a little bit earlier about John walking the floor. That's possible when you're in an office. When you're not in the office, it might look like they're on Slack or Teams and really doing shout outs for people or, celebrating the wins with people as well.
Okay, Fee, what else have you got?
Leaders who stretch you. So organisations have always got hundreds of problems that they need to solve. And I love it when a leader really believes in you and something that they think that you can do, even though you haven't demonstrated at all that you have the experience. So Sean had a vision on human-centered design, that it was the future of data and analytics, really getting to the bottom of what is the problem you're trying to solve. I built a program using IDEOs, or is it IDEO? I don't know. Over their framework, and I learned so much along the way in doing that. The important thing about a leader identifying a stretch goal for you is, what's the worst that can happen? You fail. I've had great leaders who haven't cared at all if I failed, similar to your story before about the guys sharing their shooting story and then giving you a different opportunity. When things go wrong, no drama. It hasn't cost a great deal for the organization, and you can always try again, or you can move into a different direction.
And I think to that other point as well, if you don't take risks, you're not going to potentially excel. So having a great leader that gives you that space to take risks and potentially fail, it's great.
The belief that he had in me that I could build many programs was really empowering. And again, it was a period of high growth for me.
I love the whole pushing boundaries piece as well, which reminds me of a story with a previous leader of mine called Zohia, who really pushed me. Every day he'd be like, okay, then let's do this. And I'd be like, oh, no, we can't do that. And he would very much say, yes, you can. I really enjoyed working with Zohia on his ability to keep me thinking bigger and bigger. And we were very successful in what we did because I think of his big personality and driving that.
I love that when people or leaders have this expansive view of where things can go. It really expands the remit of what the team can achieve as well. It's really inspirational and sort of gets everyone hyped towards stretching themselves.
Yeah.
Got another one. Leaders who partner with you. So it's really easy to think of, command control style leadership where they come in, this is what's happening. It's all this top down, pushing down all the time. But we all have strengths and weaknesses. And I believe a powerful team is when they know that their team excels in an area that they do not. And they may not just have the time for it, or it may be that they just suck at it. In fact, at times, great leaders, hire for these gaps as well. So at JLL, an organisation-wide transformation meant that someone that I perceived as my peer ended up being my manager. And boy, was that a learning experience for me. Turns out Paul outpaced me in many areas. And that was a great learning as well, understanding what other people bring to the table and why that may actually be more important in a senior level than what I have to bring to the table as well. We found a groove much faster than what I expected. And that's because he focused me on the things that I was good at, and he focused on the things that he excelled at, where I played the support crew for him. So I teased out the strategy, built the programs, which were very in line with his vision as well. And we just adapted to where we had gaps at pace. So that was something that was really amazing to have, was this strong partnership where I knew that I had a leader who was there to support me, to support the team. We would have some tough conversations along the way. It wasn't always the rainbows and, sunshine, rainbows, lollipops, all that. But we did know that we had a commitment to helping to transform the team, and we really delivered on that.
Yeah, something we haven't spoken about enough is around egos, right? The ability for people to put their egos aside to lead as well is super important.
Huge learning for me. You go in, you think, why can't I be in that leadership role? Well, he was 10 times better in that leadership space than I would have ever been. But I feel like I probably was 10 times better than what he was in going out and building the gamification programs. And it gave me an opportunity to shine in a space that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just want to dig a little bit deeper into my personal experience on egos, and shout out to Jono, who really taught me a lot around putting your ego aside. He used to say to me a lot, Sarah, you could do this role. And this is before I was a leader. He said, you've got what it takes to do my job. that's something that always sat with me. Years down the track, I proved that in abundance that I could do that. Putting your ego aside as a great leader is something that's super important. Not everyone's after your job, but give people the encouragement to come in.
That's a great thing to end on.
Yay!
I've thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. In fact, now I want to have more discussions with the people who actually led you along the way, because, they inspire me, and I know what you've ended up like as well.
Yeah, and I think same for you, Fee. I do know a couple of the people that you've mentioned today, but there's a few that I'm like, oh, can we get them on a podcast and, really kind of drill them and to learn more? Because I think there's some really great takeaways there. What makes a great leader?
Thank you so much for sharing and also being a little bit vulnerable along the way as well. I really appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye.